Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do the second part of the color grading piece. So last week we did color corrections, and what I was trying to do was to get to a place where we're establishing a difference between the two activities. So there's color correction and then there's color grading. Now color correction is basically getting the picture to a point where it's a good reflection of what you took the photograph of. You might have to do a little white balance corrections. You might do a little contrast, those types of activities. So we went through that in some detail last week. Now, this next part, color grading, I think requires a little bit more explanation, because I think the first part we've all done, we're all very familiar with. The second part is something new. Now, speaking personally, I do very minimal color grading on most of my shots. I can probably think, I guess, around 10%, if that, of the shots actually involve radical changes to the color scheme. But since I was going to talk about this, and I wanted to explore some of the sort of further reaches of color grading and show you how you can get ideas, how you can get inspiration for doing this, and literally how you can get those ideas and drag them into your Affinity workflow and get exact matches. So when I talk about color grading, what I'm really talking about is the sort of looks and feels that we're accustomed to seeing in films in the cinema. Now, I don't know how many times this has occurred to you, but if you're sort of watching a film, let's take a really well-known one, Alien, for example, and you look at the color grade and you're immersed in it, you're immersed in the film, you're feeling every bit of the drama, every bit of the dread and the excitement. But there's a little bit of me as a photographer that's looking at that film saying, if I presented this still as a photograph, people would be very critical. You know, the skin tones are perhaps a little bit green, or, you know, it varies from film to film. But you can look at the color palettes of films and see some that are strayed a very long way from what we would recognize as everyday reality. And that's probably the furthest extreme of it. The area that I'm most interested in is the area that says that we can get, by using these tools, we can get a much more coherent color palette working in our photographs than might appear in nature. So we can literally grade a picture and make that color scheme more coherent and more of a part. Now, what we're going to look at, and the way that I'm going to structure this video actually is kind of back to front, because what we're going to do in a second is dive into the color grading, and I'm going to be demonstrating gradient map adjustments, and we're demonstrating curves again. This time using soft light blending mode, and we're going to be looking at selective color adjustments. They're the primary tools that we're going to use. We could optionally bring in the HSL adjustment to tweak the colors a little bit, but I haven't done in the demonstration, but that is certainly an option. After we've done the demonstration, what I'm going to do is show you some websites that I use for inspiration. There's a couple of Instagram accounts and there's a whole raft of websites. I'm going to show you a selection of them. You can search for different ones where people have interpreted or analysed the colour scheme of the film, of a scene in a film that they want to copy, and that you can take these images into the free Adobe color wheel application and analyze that color scheme. And this is incredibly useful because this will show you in the tool where your colors are sitting in terms of coherent color schemes. I think we probably would need an entire video on color science to really make this make sense. So if you feel that you want that, give me a shout in the comments down below and I'll do a separate video about that. I mean, the more I think about that, the more I think it's probably a good idea, because the colour science is really the foundation of all of this stuff. And when we talk about a coherent colour scheme, we are talking about that in terms of colour science principles. Okay, let's get into the demonstration. Okay, so you can see here again we've got the overblown area in the sky. We've got this is a little bit too dark for my liking, and we probably want to crop this. So let's start off with cropping it. I'm going to go for custom ratio. And I'm going to go 16 by 9. I'm going to bring this in a tiny little bit and bring it down a tiny little bit so we've got some foreground. Okay, that's where we want to be. Alright, so let's get rid of the peaking in the sky, and let's just take the exposure down a little bit overall. Okay, now one thing I'd quite like to do here. Okay, and I'd like to just quickly rebalance effectively broad brush stroke the sky and the land. So I'm going to do a quick shadows and highlights adjustment, and doing this in this dialog is going to seal this into the file, so we don't want to do anything too radical here. I'm going to lift my shadows up and I'm going to take my highlights down. Okay, now that's a better balance, and it gives me lots of room left, and darks and lights, lots of room to play with. Okay, so we're going to go develop on this. Alright, and now we're going to go to the color grading studio, and this is basically a variation of the Pixel Studio. This is all the tools you'll see here will be familiar from Affinity Photo 2. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a gradient map. Here, let me just explain what a gradient map is. A gradient map allows me to effectively put a gauze over the picture with a very slight color difference, and it helps to draw all the colors together into a coherent scheme. So let's go through this. Right, we get rid of the middle one. And we just want a straightforward two-color scheme. Now, I sampled colours earlier from the colour scheme that I wanted to use, so and I'll show you how to do that at the end of the video. So this is B29177. Okay, so we've got a sort of orangey sandy effect, and we want the teal in the sky. So let's go back here, click on that, and we go to 2D, whoops, sorry, and we'll go to 2D 626A. Okay, so you can see here we've got our basically a very faded orange and a nice teal sky, and you can see that this is applying where we want it to apply. So we've got, it's relative, so we want to take this down, and we're going to use soft light. Where's soft light gone? Okay, and that's quite a pleasing effect, I think. So we could back it off a little bit in terms of the opacity, so that's where it's starting to make its presence felt, about halfway, 40% or so. If I put levels in, yeah, I'm liking the look of this, so I can bring that to there, and I can bring my white level to there. Okay, and that has brought the vibrance back into the image, but it's kept the color coherence, so that's something that's good. And now we're going to tweak the colors using the curves. And we need to keep an eye on our levels here. Okay, so that's our master. Now if we go to red, you can see that if we take red away, we're introducing a lot more green. If we boost red, we're introducing, surprisingly, a lot more red. So we want this in the middle a little bit, like there. We don't want it affecting the sky at all, so we'll just take it out. Now, these are very subtle, so we'll just leave that there. Our greens, we want to keep the greens. And I'm just looking at this area here. I'm going to keep the contrast, and we're having quite a positive effect on the sky as well with that. And our blues, again, I'm going to drop that down a little, and I'm going to take that down a little. So we're really drawing the attention to the front of the picture with this. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so that's satisfactory. I like the effect of that. And let's see if we can't affect this a little bit for the better. We'll try a selective color adjustment. In the blues, and yeah, and there, and in the cyans. Yeah. And Just back that off a little bit. I think that's okay. There, so let's just see. We'll make this into a group. And turn that off, and that's our original. And here we've got the, what I like to think is an improvement. Okay, so I'm happy that I've got the color balance right here. This is working pretty much the way that I wanted it to work. But the picture as a whole looks quite flat and quite one-dimensional. Now there's another element here that is the one that brings depth into the picture, and that is luminosity. And that is absolutely key to this process. So that is the difference between what we're seeing here and what we're seeing there. So with the addition of luminosity, we've managed to bring this depth into the picture. So next week what I'm going to do is look in detail at luminosity, the adjustments that we can make using luminosity masks and hue masks and dodging and burning to bring added depth to the picture. This last bit I wanted to show where you can get inspiration from and how to use it and how to bring it actually into Affinity. So there's dozens of websites like this, for example. So this is a still from Mad Max Fury Road, 10 years old, real scorched earth. It's not a million miles away from the look that I was trying to get in the example. But what the site has usefully done is split out the color palette. And you don't have to rely on sites that do this, but I'll just demonstrate something else here. To my utilities, and I do screen grab. Okay, so if I do a screen grab here, and I just want to get the color palette. Okay, that's saved the screen grab. I'm going to save it to the desktop. Alright, so what I can do is I can go onto the Adobe Color, color.adobe.com. It's a free and really useful thing, and what I can do is there's my screenshot. Okay, and what this does is extract and show me where the colors are, if you like, on the gradient. So if I want to rearrange this, I'll keep that because that was the sky. And I don't want the red, but that gives me my look, and I'll just arrange this slightly differently. So I'm going from dark that's more or less it. Okay, so if I do that, then I can go to my color wheel and I can look here and I can see immediately that I've got a really strong uniformity in my color palette. There's this line here tells me that this is going to work really well. And what I was talking about in the demo, the color opposite, the color to get that color gradient, that's my sky color. It's this one. Okay, and so you can see at a glance, if I go outside of this, you can see that that starts to clash straight away. So that's really where I want to be. So you can do this two ways. You can bring a picture in, or you can import your own picture into here and play around, as I've just demonstrated with these, to give you an idea of what sort of a palette is going to suit it better. Okay, so what you're aiming for is uniformity across the wheel, and that's fundamentally how this is done. Okay, so other sites, I'm going to give you a quick look. There's an Instagram here. This is colorpalette.cinema. This is really excellent, and it's got hundreds and hundreds of color schemes in it. And there's another one here, which is Cinema Palettes. And again, this is scenes from very famous films, very famous directors, so you can pretty much find anything you want in these things. And of course, if you can't, you can just do a search on Google for color palette, whatever the movie is that you want to use for inspiration. So how do we get these into the picture so that we can actually use these values? Right, so let's go back to Affinity. And what I'm going to do is do a container layer. So it's effectively a new empty layer. And then I want to open a new file in Affinity. So I'm going to open that one. That was my screenshot. Okay, there it is. Select it, copy it, bring it there, and paste it in. Okay, and there we have it. Okay, so what I can do now, of course, is take the values from here and use them in my controls. So if I do, if I want to revisit, for example, the gradient map adjustment, I can open that up and I can use my dropper tool here to pick another color. Okay. And then I can go get that one. Okay, and I want to again pick my teal this time. And that gives me that. Then I can get rid of my layer off the top. And I've actually got, I think, a better grade. What I've tried to do here, because the move from a program like DxO Photolab or Adobe Lightroom to Photoshop or to Affinity Photo is quite a large one, and there is a lot of stuff, a lot of tools, and it can be very confusing. So what I've tried to do is to put together a framework that can be repeatable. The inclusion of the tools within the categories is somewhat arbitrary, a little subjective, but what we're trying to do here is to break it out into color correction, color grading, and luminance. And those really are the three ingredients that are going to make the photograph whole again. And for those people that are used to, whacking a bit of contrast on in Lightroom and fiddling around, yes, you can kind of busk it, although process helps. And what I've found myself is that This framework is very much devised for my purposes to help me to get to grips in the beginning with photo grading in Photoshop. And it translates to Affinity pretty well. There are slight differences in the tools, but this works quite well in Affinity and indeed in any editing application. So the inclusion of the tools, I haven't shown all of the tools that are available in Affinity for colour manipulation. I would encourage you to experiment and play around with them. The beauty of this framework is that you can see very clearly where you are and what's affecting what by going into the different categories and turning things on, turning things off. It's very easy to retrospectively go back and make fine tweaks to the settings in order to get the photograph to work as a whole. Okay, yeah, I hope this has been useful, and if it has, give us a like down below, subscribe to the channel. We'll be looking at luminosity, luminance next week, again with Affinity, and we're going to be looking in particular at luminosity masks, hue masks, and dodging and burning. Okay, guys? Hopefully we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye now.